the dread from uptown. You know my sound is major. I know you like the lyrics skit, so just do me a favor. Tell the tech to turn my dad up. This is a pack up. Hey, you don't back up, because I wanna dive in and swim in the mentals where your thoughts roam. I wanna make you know my home before you never be alone. But when you hear my song, sing along with the rhythm, cause I got big and fat beats that I get from. Yes, it's the ears and I'm checking out the blonde one. Maybe I can have one, maybe I can con one. Chill, I'm one with God, brothers. It's hard to stay straight until you're scared straight, and then you can't wait to get out. Then you shout, damn, I got freedom. Unless it's being taught black man, I know you need one. The right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. Yeah, unhigh I am, you want the plan, then that's the native. You shouldn't tell an artist not to be creative. You see, the motive is to control more than this did. Hit listen up, it's in the soul, and I bring much more than your average MC. Please give me a break, man. Let me be me, so I can be free to do as I please. See what I see, be who I be. And yo, act like me. I got the rhyme and my timing from the center. Lyrics from the brain, even when I start to enter. The beats I'm bending, the vibes I'm sending, it's pleasure, never better. Even though shit is a mess, I never stress, in touch with insight, therefore I'm blessed with the armor.
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon. This is segment 2 of a series that we are doing with Spencer Barclay on the nature of money and what we as sovereign beings can do with it in this day and age. So the first show we did, if you haven't listened to it, I strongly suggest you go back and listen to it, because we kind of did a bit of an overview on some of the history of the way our system was set up the way it is right now. We didn't go way back in history, like to the creation of you know, the monetary systems, but we went back to our monetary system basically. And this time we're going to go back into some of and we're going to start breaking part of that down and really go into depth in some of those things, so everybody has a fuller and deeper understanding of exactly what we got going on here. And hopefully by the end of this series, everybody's going to have a really good grasp of the system that we're working under right now, and have maybe come up with some really good ideas on how we can tweak and modify this system and push it around a little bit and make it work for us as sovereign beings. So Spencer, this is awesome to have you back again and doing this with us.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So
before we start, I was going to say, make sure you get a pen and paper. You definitely want to take notes.
Me?
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely a good idea. So we decided we were going to go into law merchant law in this segment and start off there and really break that down for us. So Spencer, the floor is yours.
Yeah, law merchant law, lex mercatoria, as it was known in Latin. The law merchants were the guys that these were the guys that were experts in the handling of money. And they did it as a side business to a lot of their wholesale dealings in commodities. That was the culture and environment where money would have been scrutinized. You know, so going back in time in history, these guys were, they go way back to the Phoenicians and the Egyptians trading and that kind of thing. You know, and then the regulations went on up through, I don't know, the rolls or the scrolls of Oleron, which are probably 1,000 years old.
Now, was this were these laws pretty much universal as far as the whole, I guess at North Africa and Western Asia and European area, that whole Mediterranean area?
Yeah, yep. That's why it developed, is because without an even playing field for the rules, there would be no international commerce. It wouldn't happen. It was the rules themselves that spurred the international trade. that's where this kind of stuff was developed, is trading fairs going back and forth, and when contracts broke down, contracts just being agreements, when that broke down, when expectations weren't fulfilled, people had to sit around and scratch their heads and figure out why that didn't happen. Who owes who? Is the creditor the problem, or is the debtor the problem? Or sometimes it would be the carriers too, and things like that. So that's why a lot of it exists in maritime or admiralty law also. But yeah, just as an example, the rolls of Oleron were from, I don't know, the 12th century, maybe 1100s. Okay. That was just some fine tuning of what was going on, and so a lot of the laws and rules and regulations were just expectations of what would happen in court if a debtor or a creditor took the other into court over a controversy.
So real quick, what was the governing body over these laws? Was it just something that all the different countries and provinces and kingdoms and everything signed up to, or was it all merchant based?
Well, it was merchant based, but here's what would happen: is all of this law, if you will, was just the discovery of fundamental reasoning, and so it wasn't anything written down or promulgated in any one place. It didn't need to be. To give you an example, it would just become known and part of the culture as far as a maxim of whoever brings the liability has to bring the remedy. That would be the kind of thing that would be learned and added to the accumulation of knowledge and the accumulation of wisdom inside of law merchant laws. And so you don't need to write that down anywhere. If there came a controversy somewhere and that was an element that needed to be figured out, is, well, hey, wait a minute, who is it that brought the liability in this situation? Because that's the guy that needs to bring the remedy. It's just sheer reasoning.
Right.
You don't need to rely on it being written somewhere.
As just a really quick overview, how was it that they used to pay each other? So if I'm, for example, like if I'm in England and you're in Spain, mm-hmm. and I owe you money, but Tom is the next town over and he owes you money.
Yeah. The expectations would have been whatever would have been in the contract. And so how they paid each other and what was owed is all based in contract. And so that might be a quick segue into what is a fact. And a fact is an agreement of the parties. And so if someone agreed to pay Tom's the creditor in a situation, and someone agreed to pay him in either $1,000 gold coin or the going rate in iron parts, that means that right there it's in the contract. They could either pay in gold or a substitute. So that's the whole story, Ramon, is hey, wait a minute, how are people getting paid, and how is that payment going to be delivered? That's the whole story here. It's going to take a while to unfold, but so here's something else that needs to be understood in setting this out and understanding law merchants, is they had such a culture and environment unto themselves that they had books, they had guides on each other to keep track of this, to keep track of each other, and it was essentially their credit rating back then. And they were called merchants' directories. And I have a merchants' directory from the 1600s from Baltimore as an example. And so if you're going to do business with somebody in Baltimore, and they've proposed buying something from you and you're in Boston and you don't know anything about this guy back in 1694, you could go grab the Baltimore merchants' directory to find out if this guy's any good. And I think that's something that's probably an element of understanding that's very unknown, and it's an essential element to understanding how they operated. Because default on a contract is always in question. You could always say, well, hey, 500 years ago, who's to say that the debtor would even pay, right? Why wouldn't he just default? And so there was directories all over the world with anybody you wanted to do business with, and they were a member of the guild. Right, there were the law merchant law guys were members of a guild, which is, it's a union. And so just to get into the guild was quite a process and quite an event. And it required 2 or 3 other guild members, separate guild members, to vouch for them and bond in. And that's one of the reasons where you have admiralty bonding, where you have 2 or 3 sureties for yourself. And a lot of these merchants were sureties or bondholders for other members. And so just to kind of break into the story, we have to know about bonding a little bit and what's in a bond and the property that would be pledged. But we can make it fairly quick. If I wanted to become a law merchant, get into the directory, I would have to put up a bond myself. I don't know what the values were. I'm certain it depended on so many factors.
Right, the type of merchandise you were doing and et cetera, right?
Yeah.
And whether or not you already had credibility or your family name or
family name.
Sure, yeah.
So when I wanted to break into to be a member of the guild, let's just say I had to put up a bond for $1,000. That bond needs to be liquidated. In case I default, someone needs to sue me. That $1,000 is already put up. It's already in escrow somewhere. But more than that, I needed to put up more than my own share. I had to have other guys vouch for me. And so that was quite a little project to break into it. And a lot of these guys that would become law merchants, they would work for other law merchants. They would be employed as a warehouseman, or maybe they would do the accounting and be the cashier somewhere. Cashiers then are what we would think of as accountants now. And so they're going to keep track of the books and all that kind of thing for someone else. And so when these guys wanted to break in, and so if I wanted to break into law merchant just like anybody else, I would probably have to have 2 or 3 other guys also put up a bond for me. And so that's going to really make me be on my toes and to be very honest and trustworthy, because other people aren't going to want to put up a bond on my behalf if I'm not real vouchable.
Right.
And so once you've established the culture of law merchant law with that kind of criteria, it kept the levelness of the playing field and the reliability as high as possible.
Right. So I suppose if somebody defaulted on their contract, that not only would they lose their bond, but they'd have 1 or 2 other guys, however many other people that put up bond for them, out searching for them.
Right. They'd have a lot of black eyes. Maybe not literally, but now how are you gonna rectify that in one of these directories? Right. These guys probably weren't printing them very often, every 5 or 10 years or something.
Right.
This wasn't the age of the internet.
Yeah.
And so also if somebody defaulted on a contract, there had better be good reason, and it wouldn't be done frivolously. They would think it through and say, hey, wait a minute, I can't in good faith pay this contract, because in this case, it's the creditor who's out of line here. They may have their hand out for money, but they didn't come through on the goods. And that's really what needs to be put into the directory. That's where the black mark needs to be. And so if someone defaulted on a contract, when you look at it initially, there was damn good reason to do it.
And so this just popped into my head that so this would be the reason for the origin of the maritime law courts.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. At trade fairs, and that's also why they were such a specialty type court that required the consent of both the parties to go to it, because they were very quick. The process was very expedited. That's all they were dealing with was contracts and money, and we didn't need to get into the depth of consideration in the jurisdiction. The term here is in rem, over a thing, rather than in personam jurisdictions that would have jurisdiction over the man or over the person. That needs to be gone over with a lot finer tooth comb, with a lot more care and consideration.
Right.
But these courts, They were called statute staple courts, and they were just boom, boom, boom. And it's just a quick side note. That's kind of along the lines of how the municipal courts and the county courts, for traffic tickets that's where they've evolved from. And so people that have studied that a little bit, that's why they need to get your agreement for jurisdiction. When the judge says all rise, everybody needs to stand up to indicate, yeah, I agree with the jurisdiction. The court makes an offer of jurisdiction and it needs to be accepted. People need to stand up. And so that's where this came from, way back with law, merchant law, and we're just talking bills of exchange. Let's figure out this contract. That's all traffic courts are. It's driver's license and registration. Hey, we got a contract. Let's move forward. I agree that there's a contract. We just need to get down to the nitty gritty of the finite elements of it. But anyway, let's not get into the current stuff yet. So that's what I think a lot of people are missing with either understanding law, merchant law, and bonding is another element that people have kind of just blindly and mindlessly plagiarized bonding, but not known why it's happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons is that we need to have a very methodical approach to bringing new folks into the guild. So, and it's also how historically the equivalent of a credit score would have been published.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that reference book would be. What'd you call it again?
Merchant's Directory.
Merchant Directory. Yes, I can definitely see how that would be. Definitely parallels the credit report.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, and I can see how many different factors could play into that. If one of your bonds are a Rothschild or something, then man, you got a great credit rating.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, and so when I started looking into some of these directories, I would see that the level of detail was extraordinary. For someone, but some of these directories would be from Argentina, and they would start out with an overview of the country. What was the predominant? It would be like reading a Wikipedia article. And then from there following links to a finer and finer detail. They'd give an overview of the economy of the country. And then within that, if you wanted to look up certain merchants, then it would be, okay, this is the kind of volume and the typical merchandise that this particular merchant deals in. And so if you had a guy down there that was just dealing in iron and steel and metal supplies or that kind of thing, not that who knows what people would use the information for, but now all of a sudden if the guy starts buying spices or he turns in from an importer into an exporter, it was just a level of information that was exceptionally detailed, even that far back, and I was surprised to see the level of detail that these guys were tracking each other with.
Yeah.
And so if you had a guy that was, let's just say, down in Argentina, and he's doing a lot of importing of finished European products, I don't know what that would be, maybe furniture or wood or just whatever it is that just wasn't available natively in South America, he's probably going to be exporting things at the same time. Once you're on the docks, once you have the savvy and sophistication and the skills going on, you can not only make money by buying from Europe low and selling high locally. Why not use the same warehouses and the same skills and the same resources to be shipping out whatever you have access locally and reship it back out? And I don't know what maybe it's wool or something, from Argentina.
Yeah.
And he wants to ship that back to Europe. You might as well. The real nature of or the depth of where their skill was within the contracts, one of those elements was money. And so if that guy's, whatever they're going to get paid in, they always needed to be satisfied that they could use that payment. And so that's where we get into money. Most of the time, this stuff wasn't exchanged or bartered for other products. It wasn't a product-to-product exchange. Most of the time it was for a currency or a monetary value.
Right.
Most of the guys, like, if I'm in, let's say, Boston,
Uh-huh.
and I want to buy something from Argentina, and I'm consistently buying something from, let's say, Tom,
Yeah.
um, and then I'm consistently selling to you things, so I would have things sent to me, and I would send things to you instead of sending money back and forth. I
Yeah.
just have you always pay Tom.
Right. We do that with a bill of exchange.
Okay.
So have you seen examples of some of these old contracts and the complexity of them?
Yeah. A lot of times they were profoundly simple. Super simple, because some of the big concerns that these merchants would have is the credibility of who they're doing business with. And so once they have either a certain direct working relationship or something that they had confidence in, a lot of times these guys would write up a contract and just say, hey, send me 1,050-pound bags of rice no later than the end of January and no sooner than the first part of March. Basically giving them the month of February.
Right.
At a certain amount of money, let's say U.S. dollars, payable within 30 days. Yeah, this stuff was just quick and dirty and simple at some level. A lot of times there wasn't a need to have these complex indentures of performance, and that's more along the lines of the real complicated contracts would be, let's say, something current like corporate contracts or a contract to build a freeway system or a portion of a freeway system. I mean, there's got to be so many what ifs that would come about now, but back then it wasn't as dynamic and it wasn't as complex.
I'm assuming that those contracts would also involve, like, if I'm shipping something to you and it gets pirated.
Yeah.
Did they also have insurance back then, or?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, limited liability. Sure. Yeah, and then who was liable and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and I don't know how prevalent that was. I didn't look much into that because it's such a side avenue that I just didn't follow it up that much. But a lot of these guys would want to get paid in a monetary unit. And so there was one of two ways to do that. And one was that bill of exchange, Ramon, like you were saying. If you're the creditor and I owe you money, it might be easier for me to have one of my debtors pay you if he's closer to you. And this stuff gets kind of complex. And I have some bill of exchange videos that are, I think they're not only not enlisted, I don't think they've ever hit the internet that could make this fairly simple. So let's not get into it because I've already done them. But let's just say that to direct someone closer to pay the creditor was a method that was used quite often. And it was the instigation of a new contract too. But the bottom line is we could either pay in actual money or representative of money, either a check or real gold, or cash or real gold. It was either representative money or it was, the alternative was actual property. Property is now something that a law merchant guy is going to be considering in understanding money, and so they know that that's an element to scrutinize within money. Because property is the right to something to the exclusion of everybody else.
Right.
So,
it's mine.
Right. And that little element, that concept, constantly replicates itself elsewhere in contracts and tangible subjects of property, actual things. Whether it's, a lot of times they'll call this stuff chattels or real land or fixtures. Whether it's a boat or livestock. A certain number of livestock wasn't always owned by a single man. Maybe there was a joint venture where where three guys owned them out equally, and they were going to, drive them to market and just split it three ways. To understand property was always a prevalent and deep concept that they were aware of on a daily basis. And that was probably where a lot of these guys cut their teeth and became good at what they did. Is you don't just break into being a law merchant, maybe with the exception of a family lineage. But if you just wanted to break into it, you'd go work for somebody. And if you worked in a warehouse or out on the docks, you might be writing contracts, or you'd be privy to, and you'd be exposed to where contracts went bad and why disagreements and controversies arose. And so they would be experts at being able to negotiate and find loopholes in contracts or their performance that was required before they ever became a law merchant themselves. They would have been able to look over the shoulders of as they were
learn the ropes.
Yeah, learn the ropes. And oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, were these law merchants? It also sounds like they were kind of like lawyers at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily mean they were an attorney. Yeah, a lawyer is just one who's proficient in law. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're an agent for someone else. The difference between a lawyer and an attorney is quite different. And so when you just want to have counsel, that's not necessarily a lawyer or an attorney either. And we always hear we have right to counsel. And then there's someone who's good at or who is a solicitor, I guess, and a barrister. Yeah, these are all different concepts that most people just sort of lump into attorney. Attorney does come out a little bit later too. Attorney historically is an office, very much like a notary would be, but it was an attorney's job to attern, and it's a French word, and it means to pass over property from one person to another. So they would take possession before they would pass it along, and it worked very much like escrow, and its purpose was essentially a purpose of escrow. If Tom and Ramon want to do a sale and bargain, if they want to sell something to each other, or sell something and the other wants to buy, Tom, if you wanted to sell a ship and Ramon wanted to buy it, but you didn't know each other, and you didn't want to put up a lot of risk, right? If Tom wants to sell the ship, you're not going to want to hand over the title to Ramon until you get gold coin.
Right.
And Ramon's saying, I'm not going to hand you a bag of gold till you give me the title. And you're stuck. Neither one of you wants to budge. And so there's that real awkward middle ground of, well, each of you has hold of what the other wants to let go of. Well, an attorney, that was their job, to attern, and they'd kind of act like escrow, and so they would take in property from each side and then redistribute it. Attorneys are required to be licensed now. It makes a lot of sense, because not only are the courts private, not only are they private statute staple courts, but the statutes themselves are copyrighted, trademarked. Go look at a Black's Law Dictionary and you'll see that it says that it's copyrighted. No portion may be reproduced. Well, how do you do business if you can't use their redefined terminology? It's private. That's one of the reasons why you have to be approved by the bar. And then the other reason is when all money that's going to be paid is privately issued script, like Federal Reserve notes or British pounds, those are issued by, that's private issued by central banks, privately held banks. And so whose ever property is in play, they get a say in who the escrow is going to be. Tom, if your ship was going to be the property being sold, for sure you would have a say in who the attorney was going to be and who the escrow was going to be. And you could tell Ramon, a guy that you've never done business with, you didn't know him, you could say, hey, listen, we are not using an escrow unless they are of a certain class. You know, maybe they're part of the merchant guild. You know, this if it's as long as it's one of those guys, I trust it. In other words, you have
Right.
all the standing in the world to demand that your property is going to be in escrow in a place that you trust. And so that's why attorneys are required to be licensed. And it's because you're using private. That's why the government gets to say who's an attorney and who's not. It's because it's their property is what's in play. So they get to say who the escrow is.
So then a lawyer would be just a somebody who is basically more of an advisory type position then.
Right. Rather than that escrow level. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
I learn something new every day.
Yeah. Definitely.
So
I didn't know that there was a distinction there.
yeah, it's huge.
I wonder, I was just thinking, I wonder if lawyers themselves know the distinction.
I doubt it. At least that last little element that I put is one of whose ever property is in play has a say. I think most attorneys are just so ingrained that you have to be a bar attorney in order to be an attorney. You just have to be a bar member. I don't think it's scrutinized that deeply, but I don't know either because I'm not familiar with that culture, that environment.
Really briefly, so that's why, for example, a modern day lawyer would have to get a bar exam. Like if he wanted to work in Connecticut, but he lived in New York,
Yeah.
he would have to get them in both places. So if you want to do work in New York and Connecticut.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're all private courts. All those courts have business licenses. They're not public. They're not like a public park where there's no gates, no fences, nobody running the place. You know, they're not shutting the lights out at 10 o'clock and saying everybody's got to leave. You know, once you understand the true nature of public, you can see that those courts are not. They're not public. In other words, we're running in a democracy here. We're not running in the republic like the Constitution was first founded. You know, we the people and all that kind of stuff. Now that's the sales pitch. That's the propaganda that we're still moving forward under the republic and home of the free and land of the brave, and we have freedom. And that's this is a democracy and we have liberty, and everything's got a business license attached to it if it's an organization. You know, even churches are 501c3s. And you know, notaries, for the most part, used to be considered lawyers. It was just presumed that if you went and hired a notary, they could draft up the documents that you wanted as far as making notarial presentments and protests on bill of exchanges and things. It used to be very common knowledge that you weren't going to go see an attorney. You'd go see a notary or a lawyer, and they would help you draft up those documents. And now if you talk to a notary now, they have no idea in the world. It scares them to death to do anything other than be a witness for a signature.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I need to do some notary training videos too, but I just haven't had time. But let's not get too far off of the law merchants with an eye towards the property behind money. And they're going to, you know, there's another element too that we need to get at in terms of how complex contracts get. And just the kinds of contracts there are and how they get split up and the elements that are in each of them. And I thought maybe I'd go over it just a little bit, just to see what there is to know. And not only that, what there is to know for us, but what the law merchants, what their daily routine and even their hourly routine consisted of thinking about these kinds of things. When you go deeper and when you think of an extremely long and intricate novel like something that Stephen King might write, I can't think of any other novelist, but once a reader of a book like that gets into a very long and intricate book, you can just see the politics and the culture that's being developed there, and that's not what I'm doing here. We just don't have the time, and that's probably what it would take to do justice is to write a fiction novel at that kind of length and intricacy, to be able to see contracts and money through their eyes. And part of the problem with writing a book like that is, how do you write a book that uses concepts like novation and discharge and waiver and failure of consideration? You know, what that might sound like it's obvious on the surface, but not when you go hit a dictionary and really see how deep each one of those can be. Without spending too much time right now going over how much information has been sort of bled out from public knowledge, whether it's, you know, the public school system or TV or whatever, it makes it difficult to go and even see things through their eyes because of how much homework it takes, even at the individual word level. Over into contracts, it has so many elements, and then those elements are split up in so many different ways. Just as an example, contracts are either express or implied, and so right there we've kind of branched off into two lines of study. And then express contracts, generally speaking, there's three kinds of them. There's simple, there's special, and then there's express contracts of record. And those would probably be contracts that would have a seal associated with them, would be a matter of public record. Way back down inside of contracts, we need to get to a place where the contract gets extinguished or discharged. And those are two different concepts. Because to end a contract it's not just money or payments. There can be waiver or what's called release. Sometimes a contract ends when a new contract is issued, or contract can end when you get into it a ways and you say, hey, wait a minute, way back at the start there was failure of consideration. And another way is to extinguish or discharge a contract is novation, and that really will need to be understood later on when we understand how current money is used, because when we use borrowed money, we're doing a novation. It's not pure discharge. And then the last way that I'd want to consider for today's talk is just performance of the contract. The thing was paid. You know, the 1,000 bushels of rice was paid for. And so if Tom was buying that 1,000 bushels of rice, 1,000 bags of rice from Ramon, and Tom, you paid for it with a bill of exchange, right there arises a question of, did you pay for it or not? If you use a bill of exchange to send Ramon to go get gold somewhere, did you pay him or not? And so I'm not asking you directly, but that's a question that needs to get entertained a little bit before we move any farther.
Oh.
And so the answer might surprise you. So Ramon, if you were to get paid with that bill of exchange, what would you say your answer would be on that? Did you get paid or not?
I would say no.
Well, then you're right. And here's the answer. It depends on what you accept. If you accepted that as payment, you were paid. And if you rejected it, then Tom needs to come up with, he needs to pay you. But that was fairly unheard of for a law merchant in the guild to go against the grain of how you guys were doing business.
So, but would well, I suppose this would be a case-by-case thing. If somebody had it in the contract that they would be getting paid with a bill of exchange, then they would have to accept that as
you got
payment,
it.
though. Right.
Yep. Now we're back to contract again. You got it. That's exactly right. But if it wasn't stipulated, it just said you were supposed to pay $1,000 American dollars.
creditor on how they were going to accept that payment.
Yep. Yep. And sometimes then it would be contingent on. Now you got contracts rolling like crazy.
So this makes it a little more complicated, but would that, so for example, Tom pays me with the bill of exchange.
Yeah.
And then I go to exchange that bill at, let's say at your
wherever
place.
it was drawn on. Yeah, wherever it was drawn.
Yeah. And that defaults.
That's your problem.
That
Yeah.
That's why I said no in the beginning.
Right.
So you still owe me money, Tom.
Right. Yep.
No, but if you accepted it, then you can't come back on me.
Right. And now we're back to that bill of exchange is actually kind of like the claim tickets at the dry cleaner. It's just a claim on property. It's not actual property yet.
Right.
It's not the actual property. Most of the reason for that exercise right there is to see, hey, wait a minute, where is property in a contract? Where is it? And that's what we're always hunting for in terms of these exchanges are ultimately what you want that buy and sell, that sale and bargain to be is just an exchange. And you'll fool around with bills of exchange in order to get gold if that's what it takes to do business, at a bigger scale. Sometimes it's just kind of a pain that they would deal with just as a consequence of doing business.
Just so everybody understands, just in case, the bill of exchange would be our modern day cash, like the American dollar, the yen, correct?
Well, probably a little more concise way to look at it currently would be more like a check, a check drawn on a bank account.
Okay.
That's a bill of exchange, and I would say banknotes in cash that would be represented that way would be probably more like just representative money. It's not really money, but it's a lot more liquid than a check is. At least historically, when gold was back behind it.
Right.
Checks were still it was still an unknown quantity when you received the check. And you know what? I'll have a couple of check lectures for you to post on your website so that people can kind of go do a little side research on that and see.
Oh, great.
And they're not mine, but they're good. And so what we're really doing here is hunting down property. When analyzing this concept of exchange too, that even has some fairly interesting concepts is when if all that was promised was $1,000 and a check was written, then property has yet to be fully exchanged both directions. And so if the check went bad, it brings up new questions as to, hey, wait a minute, did the contract get extinguished or not? Is the contract or it has been extinguished, but yet now there's a claim on the check, which is just a new contract that's been given rise. See, there's a certain complexity here in terms of thinking that needs to get done.
Right. The check itself would become a new contract, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to look at it. I don't want to get too deep into that right now.
Right.
Because I don't ever want to leave that concept of ultimately there's got to be property exchanged in the system. And so the opposite of that is a novation. When an element of a contract is swapped out, that's called novation. And so that can happen one of several ways. If a party to the contract is swapped out, let's say to a new debtor, and all of that is always subject to the creditor. He's got to be the one that okays it. Because if you are owed $1,000, that's the original contract right there. And so the creditor, always has a say if he will accept something inferior and amend the contract. Maybe not inferior, but in lieu of.
Right.
Because the debtor doesn't have authority and control. In other words, if you can just kind of envision right now, if you owed the bank $100,000, you wouldn't just assume, hey, listen, I can go change that contract anytime I want. Because no, it would have to be subject to the bank's okay. Just how we view it. In other words, it's always got to be with the creditor's okay, a novation can happen. And so novation is a very, not misunderstood, but just it's a concept that's not very known. And so when you use Federal Reserve notes currently in today's society, you performed the novation and you didn't extinguish, you didn't execute your contract. And there's elements of discharge in there too that need to be, well, did we discharge it or did we extinguish it? And so when you use a Federal Reserve note or a British pound or currency that was borrowed into existence by the local government from their central bank, when you use that, you're off the hook. But that debt that was created when that dollar was put into circulation never goes away. So when you use a $50 bill that's been borrowed into existence for a pair of shoes, the buyer for the shoes is off the hook, but the United States is still in this scenario is still liable for that $50, and so that's called a novation. And so that's what keeps contracts from being fully executed. When you're buying things that don't have substantial titles, like groceries and clothing and consumer items and real small scale stuff, it doesn't matter. But it's extremely important, and it matters very deeply in exchanges where someone buys a home and it has a title, or you use those dollars in a court case. That's why court records don't go away. You know, you would think, hey, once we close that file, it should be gone. That's an element of a trust is an asset. So once there's no asset, it just disappears. That's why court cases don't disappear when you there's a record that stays open. You know, you can go back and open up a record and look historically if there was something that needed to get looked into, and that's one of the reasons. And that's also how one of the elements of how the government always has a finger in the pie of real estate. You know, that they have an interest. They can say what code is on a house, right? They can say what kind of foundation is going to be under it, what the standards are for electricity, what the standards are for the windows. You know, that's where that guardian-ward relationship comes from, is they now have an interest in that home. And there's something called bifurcation, which is the branching off and splitting. And almost all real estate has two different kinds of titles. One's legal and one's equitable. And so that gets really complex once you start seeing that, hey, we're not using our own property just to extinguish the contract. There are people that buy and sell homes with gold coin, and the government does not have an interest in it. And so if this is the first you've ever heard it, I would think a lot of people would think initially, oh, well, that's all theory, but there's no way around it. I'm just stuck using this currency. Well, there are people that have been for decades buying and selling stuff with only gold, and there's no record of the transactions outside of the debtor and the creditor. And there's just there's no standing for anybody else to butt into that transaction, just like the old law merchants.
Wow.
You know, if somebody's selling spices and buying rugs, no one else had, from in the year 1694 in Boston, no one else had any business in butting into those records and transactions. That's why the IRS didn't exist back then. There would have been nowhere for them to go.
So I know this is going off of our planned trek today, but if somebody were to buy a home in today's world here in the United States with gold coin, would that exempt them from the whole tax system and everything with that property?
Not necessarily, but it's an element that would help. The other part of the problem is homes are registered, and so when you register something, that means that you consign that property onto the books, and so you have to think a little bit deeper and a little bit more abstract. So if something's on your books, Tom, Doesn't that mean it's your asset? Hey, let's look at your books. Well, I got this house on there. That's an asset. Well, the word address means to assign or consign to another. And the word consign, if you look that up, it means to give something away.
Right.
And when you look up give away in Webster's dictionary, to give means to fully transfer title. So you transfer title when you address a home, and all that's done in that mountain of paperwork that happened at escrow when you bought a house. And so even if you bought it with gold, you still have to undo all of that registration. A lot of people think that an address is just the number on their house that makes it easy to identify. That's kind of like the name of the house. Well, that's what happened once the government got the home. Absolutely, they do need to keep track of it. But the real impetus, the real reason behind that number is because you gave the house to the state, and they now need to keep track of. They need to keep track of it because it's on their books.
Huh.
So they then, through this, civil engineering and civil services, these guys that figure out streets and roads and all that kind of stuff, that whole system has been developed so that the government can keep track of their property. Now, those guys don't know why they're doing it. They just, they're just.
That's what I was showed to do.
Right. Even at the engineering level, they don't understand the property transfer.
So, for example, to go just a little bit off topic, in California. No, I was gonna say in California, a lot of the government was coming in and taking their land and just coming up with little excuses.
Sure.
So
they weren't taking the people's land. They were doing whatever they. If that property had an address, they were doing whatever they wanted with their own property.
Exactly. That's what I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it had an address and it was registered. Yeah, I can show some. We can put some links on the website too that is really explicit in terms of statutory what happens when you if you want to unregister property. It's not mandatory. You're not obliged to do it. And
yeah, that'd be interesting. Let's go ahead and shoot us those links, and we'll put that on there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So we got one for checks and the other for registration.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah. And so the whole. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say also the document that you had from the 1600s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I bet I could find that somewhere. The registry, the merchant's directory.
Oh, that'd be awesome to have maybe if you can scan a page or two of that and just kind of see what it looks like.
Sure. I'm looking it up now. It's extremely difficult to read because the fonts were so different back then.
Right.
And the English as well, right?
Right. The syntax of the words. Yeah, I have it pulled open right now.
Cool. That'll be awesome.
The main purpose of where I wanted to go with this is how much there was to know just with the law merchants and what they dealt in property and contract, to understand where property is in money, and then it rolls forward and it really changes nature and character in 1933. But if you spend enough time understanding what law merchants were up to prior to that, it's a smooth transition.
It sounds like a pretty simple and efficient system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you understood it the way they did, and it wasn't that big a deal once you're doing it, if that's your job, it wasn't that tough. Then all of a sudden, it's not so difficult at all. It's not a stretch to see property just roll over and change form in 33 to labor. It's not that big a deal.
Right. Okay, well, so anything else on merchant law we want to get out here tonight?
Well, I don't know what else there might be to know, unless you guys have any questions on it. I mean, as I was explaining it, did I leave any gaps anywhere?
Yeah, I think I got a really good, through that I got a pretty good picture in my head of how it was working.
Yeah.
So,
and then I pretty much understand it. But I was thinking also in the next segment we can probably just give a quick overview of it.
Sure.
Just lead out like that. So that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess we'll then we can kind of wrap this segment up. Where are we going to go with the next one, Spencer?
I probably have to go back through and listen to the very first series that we did and just see what the next step was. But it was probably going into banking and banking itself, banking proper,
Right.
to see where
Okay.
gold being dropped off, you get claim tickets for it, and then that transition happening over into 1933, and then maybe the development of the credit score
Great.
as it was related to it, and its similarity to the merchants and their directory.
Okay. Guys, I'm going to be putting a what the heck's it called, a WordPress thing on the show page for this on the website. So if anybody out there has any questions or comments that they would like to address to Spencer on any of the things that we're covering, if you would list your questions there, we will make sure that we answer all of them to the best of our ability.
Sure.
Besides that, I want to thank everybody for listening, and within the next couple of weeks, we should have the next segment out, and we're going to keep going on with this until, at least till I have my mind wrapped around all this stuff, because I see something here as a definitely stepping stone into a different way to do things here. So,
Yeah, and also, we're not. This is not part of the membership, so this is open to all. So
Absolutely.
share it, and I will also make it easier for you guys to find. So at least on the website, not for the YouTubers. So for example, it will be the nature of money, and I'll divide each segment, because each segment will have also the documents that Spencer mentions.
right, and then we'll have the WordPress pages will be on the main page of that. So anyways, actually, I think I will add a WordPress to each segment. I suppose would probably be best. That way, they can be addressed directly to the subject of the talk.
Subject of matter.
Yes, exactly.
Sounds like a contract.
Okay, well, Spencer, thanks again, and
Thank you so much.
we'll be talking to you again real soon.
Cool.
All right. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
Namaste.
It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. Yeah. Once again, it's the soul. Love is in control. 96 means more than your half. I've had to straight ahead the tread from uptown. You know my sound is major. I know you like the lyrics, kid, so just do me a favor. Tell the tech to turn my dad up. This is a pack cut. Hey, yo, don't back up, because I wanna dive in and swim in the mentals where your thoughts roam. I wanna make your dome my home, therefore you'll never be alone. But when you hear my song, sing along with the rhythm, cause I got faith in fat beats that I get from. Yes, it's the ears, and I'm checking out the blonde one. Maybe I can have one, maybe I can con one. Chill, I'm one with God, brothers. It's hard to stay straight until you're scared straight, and then you can't wait to get out. Then you shout, damn, I got freedom. Unless it's being taught like, man, I know you need one. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. I am, you want the plan, then that's the native. You shouldn't tell an artist not to be creative. You see, the motive is to control more than this did. Hit, listen up, listen the soul, and I bring much more than your average MC. Please give me a break, man. Let me be me, so I can be free to do as I please. See what I see, be who I be. Hey, yo, act like me. I got the rhyme and my timing from the center. Lyrics from the brain, even when I start to enter. The beats I'm bending, the vibes I'm sending, it's pleasure, never better. Even though shit is a mess, I never stress, in touch with insight, therefore I'm blessed with the armor. Tell your mama, but kill the drama. then my face went across the screen. This girl saw me getting raw to the beats with the gasoline. My self-esteem went through the roof. Stepped into the club, yo, I got juice. Got juice on the inbox. Now she's in my face, dragging me all around the place. Damn, it's a disgrace that I can't enjoy my craft, spew my math. Cause I'm too busy running away from this girl with the dumb laugh. My path straight, so I lose the habit. And yo, I bounce like the rabbit. Yo, she's got the habit, cause she's chasing me. I'm out the door, kid. It's in the soul, and I'm free. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time.